Hey, it's Ben from the Warehouse Underground podcast. Running out of space in your facility. It is one of the worst things that can happen. Completely slows down your op, but the customer doesn't care. That's your problem, right? But it doesn't have to be. There is a solution out there that can be a shelter in the storm until it blows over. And that can come from Warehouse on Wheels. They deliver on demand storage trailers when you need them that flex with your operation. And with locations all across North America, there's a very good chance that they can help you too. No long term leases for a new facility, no delays, no overpaying for space you don't need, no capex, just simple, smart storage delivered right to your door. So don't let your dock and your aisles become jam packed with pallets wrecking your operation. No, let WOW be your side storage solution while you go back to focusing on mainline operation. All right. Hey, what's up, everyone? Thank you for tuning in to episode number 24 at the Warehouse Underground podcast. Real talk for warehouse, DC, and FC professionals of all levels around the globe. I'm Ben, the host of the show, and joining me on the show today is a fantastic guest. His name is Rector. He is the CEO at LaborAI, which is simplifying supply chain management. But he has been a stalwart in this industry for over 30 years. And has helped operators at all levels and is very, very, very comfortable on the warehouse floor, no matter where it is in the globe. I know he has worked all over the globe. So he also has written a book called Warehousing 101, which we'll talk a little bit about at the end, which is very cool. But I'm very excited to talk to him about LaborAI, because as you know, in this industry, labor is always the biggest spend. But how people go about determining how much they need, how much they don't need, how they calculate that is anybody's guess. It's all over the map. Varies wildly depending on where you go. So I'm excited to learn about these new tools, artificial intelligence that is coming online to help predict that much better, using machine learning and analytics to create better processes and better programs for the operators out there in terms of labor. And Lee is right on the front lines in that space with LaborAI. So with that, I'll bring him onto the stage. Lee, my friend, thank you very much for coming on the Warehouse Underground podcast. How are you today, sir?
I am excellent, and thanks for having me, Ben. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, no, you got it. So I teased it in the intro a little bit, and we talked a little bit about this before the show. You're very comfortable in a warehouse. You've been in this industry for a long time, doing incredible work everywhere. But in your own words, can you just tell the audience about what is your background in the distribution industry?
Well, again, from an IT perspective in building systems and solutions, for at least the last 30 years, whether I was building a WMS, TMS, bringing them to market. We wrote the number one slotting optimization software for warehouses. And basically for the last 20, 25 years, I've operated as call it management consultant. I would call it more of a fireman for most 3PLs around the globe, whether we're in Australia, Asia, North America, South America. If there was a problem, we typically got called in to either help fix the problem or help identify the problem.
Yeah, there's a lot of firemen needed out there for 3PLs. So I appreciate that. Now, you're the CEO at LaborAI, right? So I would assume by the name that it has a heavy focus on labor, obviously. But what is it? What's it all about? I mean, what are you doing? How are the users out there utilizing it, and who are those users? I mean, who is kind of your ideal customer that you can help?
Okay. So it's a long drawn out story, but in all these years that I've been developing systems and software and marketplaces, in the back of my mind, there's always been one area that's never been tackled inside a supply chain and manufacturing, which is how do I plan for my labor?
Yeah.
As we've moved from being, direct to store, and closed distribution networks to the onset of AI and e-commerce and all these things. People want things delivered faster, smaller quantities, smaller order sizes, which means work content doesn't equal activity. In other words, you might have 5 orders, and if you used to plan based on orders, well, a store order is a store order. We know what is in it. And now you could have an order that's 1 SKU, 1 line at the back of the warehouse, or you could have one SKU with 5,000 units. And so that work content changes differently. And then having ability to plan this is really the true, we'll call it Achilles heel of most warehouses these days. They either staff too many people to meet their service level requirements because the what if scenario, what happens if we get loaded, versus, oh, I've got 30 people here today and I don't have enough work for them. What do I do with them? And for the typical operator, they don't see that till the morning of. So they basically, their time to react or do anything on labor side is they don't have enough time. So what I wanted to do was build a low cost, rapidly implementable solution that includes things like being able to analyze your orders in a real prompt manner. So in seconds, which is what we use the AI agent to do. It actually mimics the allocation system in the WMS. So we're not replacing people with our AI. We're actually replacing the WMS with our AI. And then at the same side of things, none of this works if you don't have a set of standards or engineered standards to drive your work content. So we built a database of over 1,000 engineered elements to then basically say, well, stepping on a fork is 1.2 seconds or 1.6 seconds. And all these touch points across 37, we'll call it direct touch points in your warehouse. So by doing that, we combined the onset of AI with a proprietary database to tell you today, it's what time and whatever it is at where you are today, with whatever's in your order. Well, I can tell you how much work or how many hours of labor you have across all your touch points tomorrow, within 2%. So rather, now you're right sizing in advance. And we call that prescriptive analytics. We're not seeing historical averages. Every single day, we create a new set of KPIs for the work content that you have in that day.
So is it fair to say that the more you feed the beast, the more inputs go in there, the better and more dialed in it can become? Because in my experience, when you're talking about labor planning, it's almost always retroactive. People will look at, hey, well, what did you spend the year before in this month? What was the sales? What was the widgets? How many labor hours did you use? And okay, let's just kind of build a generic plan from that. But I've always felt like there's so many gaps in that analysis. Like it's not intricate enough. So is that fair to say that you're getting down to I know you mentioned some seconds here in your analysis. So is that what you're doing? You're getting down into the nitty gritty of all these data points that a human is just not capable of calculating. And then when you do it, the better you get.
Actually, our software is pre-populated with all these numbers, right? So our software works like, a mapping software. So if you're driving from Chicago to New York, the first thing you do is you get up, you look at your phone and you pick up one of the mapping applications and it says, oh, if you go I-80, it's going to take you 8 hours and 4 minutes. And if I said to you, hey, Ben, you're driving from New York to Chicago, you'll go, you know what? Usually takes me about 7.5 hours. So that's your historical average. And Google Maps is synthesizing, saying right now, if I use this model, it's 8 hours and 4 minutes. And then you make a decision based on the travel path. So you're getting more accurate information from that mapping software rather than looking at historical averages, because the mapping software looks at, oh, there's an accident, 234 miles, and then there's construction and things like that. So when you look at those mapping solutions, they have 5 elements. We have 1,000 elements. So we're definitely more intricate, but really the true power of the software is, allowing you to see something before it happens, right? Instead of being 100% reactive or rear view looking, you're actually looking forward. One of our clients has said, we spent, $5 million over the last 2 years figuring out everything that we've done. And they said, but you know how much we've spent on what we should have done? 0. So Labor AI is actually giving you the targets today of what you should be doing tomorrow.
Yeah, and I've heard you talk about this, and when I heard you mention this, I thought, okay, he's really doing a deep dive here. I've heard you talk about the temperature variance
Yep.
depending on the facility, if it's super hot or super cold, and to have someone include that in the logic is awesome because everyone knows if you're an operator in a warehouse, you know that's a factor. But if you're just looking at a spreadsheet, if you're a finance person looking at a spreadsheet, you would never think to include that in your calculation. But if you want to dial it in, it needs to be factored in. So I just thought that was insanely impressive that that would be included, and I think that that's a hint at what else awaits in this type of program. So that was awesome.
Thank you. And
Yeah.
obviously, if you have any of your listeners have ever done in a multi-tier facility and you go up on the third level of your pick tower in the summer, you can't even work up there. It's like torture. But you still have to get the product out. So, absolutely temperature band affects fatigue rates and
Yeah.
affects performance.
Yep. Yeah. How many hours you've worked in the week? I mean, all these things begin to come in there. Now let me ask this question. So, obviously, when you're talking about supporting an operation, the warehouse, the distribution piece of it, in a lot of cases, is what I call like the widget movers or the material handler people. But sometimes you're selling something to an executive who is thinking about revenue and the money that is generated in the business. So, do you ever have that gap, or have you noticed that chasm between the sales side and the revenue and the executive side of the operation, and then the warehouse side? And how have you gone about kind of being a liaison between those two? Because it seems like a product like yours, you're sort of having to serve both. It's providing value to both, but both sides of that seem to be speaking a little bit of a different language. Is that something that you've noted in your work?
It's apparent every single day. And again, if we go back to the term, the guys on the floor just need to get things done. They're forever ever putting out fires. Whereas the operations guys don't actually, the executives don't want to go in the warehouse because they might want to get their shoes dirty, but more importantly, they're dealing with the number side of things. So if I'm an operator, and typically operators throw as much labor as they can to get the job done, right? They're get things done, guys, where the executives are the guys saying, well, we want to get it done. Well, we also have to make a profit. And in typical speak, the challenge is you actually have to equate money to touches for the people on the floor, and you have to equate touches to money for people upstairs. So you're
I see.
absolutely every single day doing an interpretation of both.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the more you do that, and you've done this a long time, I think the more you can be comfortable quickly stepping out of one and into the other. But it takes time to do that. But I think once you get it dialed in, you know the buzzwords to say, you know the language to speak in to really make it hit. So back to Labor AI, which just it's sounding to me like a very impressive tool. The more that I learn about it, but what's the value prop? I mean, when you go in and you're selling it, you're growing it. How are you making an impact for both sides? I mean, is it purely a financial impact? Is it hey, my quality of life gets better in my operation, my morale goes up, customer experience is better in terms of order turnaround time, or really all the above? Like, what do you do? What do you sell this with when you go in?
Well, there's two factors I think that we really focus in on here at Labor AI. The first is actually right sizing your building. So, if you go to an operation where people are overtaxed, right? They're running hours and hours and hours of overtime. They get, we'll call it, they get burnt out. And that onus falls not only on the clerical, but on the people on the floor. That's a problem inside of an operation. So understanding our workload, right? So on a day-to-day basis, That's the key aspect of it. And of course, the warehouse manager who's tasked with putting out the fire, but then also doing the financial P&L, and they have no way of doing it because they're too close to the fire to actually step back and go, oh, that person's not working or whatever. So that's part of the problem. So LaborAI right sizes your labor. But then what we also do is, because we're a planning tool, right? Our software does is makes recommendations to you on non-capital changes in your business that you can make that will derive, and it will actually calculate what your savings will be if you do this, this, or this. So it's at the macro level, we're making recommendations on improving your operation or the design or process that you have. And secondly, we're actually managing out the labor. And the way the software sort of, we'll say, works is like an airplane. If your current productivity standard is 78% of utilization, that means your people are working, you're generating 78% of the time work. The software will be there. But then if you're at 78% for 5 days in a row, the software will then increase the standards to 79 and will help you raise gradually, incrementally where you're going. And if you get to a place where we call it stasis, where 5 days in a row we're at 81 and I haven't made that, it will drop the planning number back down to 80. And so what that does is tell you, oh, your KPIs at 78% are 12.1 pallets an hour on receiving, and you can't get to 12.2 pallets an hour because you're traveling too far or whatever it is, or your pick rates are 160 cases an hour, 27 lines an hour, or whatever the numbers are.
Yeah.
We want to get to a point where you can actually factor that in. As we continually rely on temporary labor, we have to then actually factor in that temporary labor is not as productive as an existing employee because they have to learn every day. So the software then factors in that, maybe I'm starting at 71 because I'm always dealing with temporary labor, right? So I might be lower productivity. And, the biggest problem for an operator is that their warehouse is packed. Like they're at 98% of capacity. And because, if they're 3PL, they're getting their storage money, and their profit margin on labor goes through the floor, because as you get full, your productivity goes down.
Yep.
Right. It's rearranging the warehouse, rearranging your dishwasher so you can get in the dinner dishes because I got to move stuff around to free up space. So the software helps you look at all of this and plan for all of that.
Yeah. And I think, like I've always said that depending on the facility that you work at or the company that you work for, there's a wide variation in how much visibility you will have on the metrics that you need to see. I mean, if you're at a big time fulfillment center, they have lots of data and it's easier for you to kind of manage your shift. If you're running a traditional warehouse, sometimes they just look at one P&L. What was our labor spend? That's it. But I've always said, yeah, but you got an inbound piece, you got an outbound piece, you got picking. That labor is going into a lot of different places. So if you're only looking at it as one line on the P&L, you're really not doing yourself any favors. And I say, well, that's the only capability that we have. Chronos, our timekeeping clock, is not able to do it and everything. So it sounds like you're in agreement with me there that, hey, with more that we measure, right, the more of these things that we have, the more that the operators can dial it in.
And that's the whole thing about, software solutions historically in the market for this have been extremely expensive, to the point where they're punitive, they're not attainable. We built our model so that if you have 20 people or more in your warehouse, your ROI with our software is probably in the 10 to 50x on our monthly SaaS fee. So when our clients, whether they're global brands or small family shops, the minimum that we're deriving for a client we'll call it on the global stage, the biggest companies in the world, might be 3 to 4%. And on average, we're getting a 8 to 12% reduction in labor costs.
Yeah.
That's a big number for anybody.
That's big. Yeah.
We have sites with 20 people. We have sites with 1,000 people.
Yeah. And I know, so, like labor management systems are coming on the scene, right? They're more readily available now. They're growing. There's lots of different LMS systems out there that you can have. And I think one of the reasons why is because people are realizing that if they have this visibility, that they can really drive out the waste much better. And another thing I think that's happening is now there's so much cross pollination in the distribution world. You have managers that kind of came up with as an Amazon as an example, and then they go out to work at a family owned company that runs a warehouse. Well, they were used to having all of this type data and information. How do I have visibility? So we need this. But a LMS is very expensively. I mean, sometimes up around 50 grand just to kind of get in the door. So I don't know if you want to talk about the price of your product, but I'm sure it's not $50,000 of what.
Well, and again, true LMS, again, the value of the LMS is indicative of the cost. So in other words, yeah, 50 grand would be probably at the low end of the scale to get in.
Yeah.
And that's just the cost of the software. Then you have the services, because the LMS requires an engineer to go out on the floor and do a time and motion study for the last 6 months, it's been 1.6 seconds to get on and off of the pallet jack or whatever.
Yeah.
And so you're getting this derivatives, and you have to continually re-update your standards. And if I'm in a multi-client facility for a 3PL, I have to set standards for every single client. So it's not really unapplicable. As you mentioned, there are more coming on the market, but they're more labor monitoring systems. They're using historical averages. They're not using what we call ELS or engineered labor.
Yeah.
Right. They're not using standards. They're just creating historical averages and saying, on average, we do 12 pallets an hour. Great. So tomorrow we'll do 12 pallets an hour. But, I've got 10 different clients. Every client has a different model. Not saying that they don't have their place, because where the LMS is truly becoming a value in the marketplace is the onset of paying our employees sort of benefits on productivity.
Yeah.
Right. So performance bonuses. Well, you have to have a measure of performance bonus after the fact. So, you have the onset of orchestration systems that are basically looking at, this truck was late. So all the dependencies on that truck, I have to distribute that labor until that truck comes in. I don't want them all sitting there waiting like for the baby to come out. They have to do other tasks, and orchestration takes that on as well. LaborAI currently is the only product that sits before the WMS, before the allocation, before it's moved into the system to tell you anything about your labor. That's the true value. And our cost for a single site runs between $700 and $800 a month. So if you've got a $250,000 spend and we're getting you, 10, 12% at the low end, it's not a great return, but you're talking about, saving essentially, $30,000, $40,000 a year for an $800 a year investment. That's at the small end. Our typical sweet spot for clients is between 40 and 500 users, and the model is still the same. So they pay $800. It's the same cost for a single site customer, right? And they're still getting that 8-10%, but they're getting it now on 200 people.
Yep.
And so now you're getting, savings of $500,000-$600,000. So our clients, because they range in size greatly, and brands and across pretty much everything, every vertical market, we don't really have a challenge with regards to deploying for clients to make it simple for them to get their value out of the software.
I gotcha. Yeah. I mean, to me, it looks like a no-brainer to me, Lee. I mean, I'm just learning about it and all things, but it seems like there's some insane value here for what you pay. And it's very, very interesting. But let me ask this question though. I mean, we're talking about forecasting, right? So prescriptive analytics is the term that you use, and we're forecasting, but how far out can you go? I mean, is this the day before, a week before, a month before? What type?
So the answer to that is yes.
Okay.
But forecasting is only as accurate as the forecast.
Yeah.
But basically our software, you can forecast out. So again, depending on your business, you can forecast out as far as you want. You can go out, 2 weeks, 30 days. Some of our clients will do like a, shopping season forecast. So the last 2 weeks in November, including Black Friday, they expect to do 12,000 orders. And, so our software says, okay, if you're doing 12,000 orders, you have to make 12,000 boxes. You're fixing, 2,400 labels. And then we put on the work content. Oh, you need, 37 hours a day or 3,700 hours a day on box building. You've got, 12 seconds times 2 times 3,700, whatever your orders are for your boxes. It builds out all of these based on our table. So you can forecast out accurately, right? And this is I guess, what companies in the industry really have an issue with is precision over accuracy. We're in an imprecise industry. I don't want to do an advertisement, but there's a candy company out there that says, hey, every handful's an all new ball game. And every single day is different inside of our market. So we are not production. We don't control our own sort of entity. So we're always putting out fires, but if we can plan and get one step ahead, right? We don't want to be 10 steps ahead. If we're one step ahead, that's where we get to right now. And then we can look at our trends and trends analysis and things like that. But, right now, most companies are still putting out fires every single day. They get in the morning and go, oh, geez.
And I've said that a lot. I mean, I appreciate the lean, right? The lean and Six Sigma crowd, everything, but that has a manufacturing background to it. And it is standard work, and there is a certain level of standard work that we want in distribution center, but there is a component of it that is non-standard every day because you are constantly reacting to all the variables, and the variables are the customer, right? The customer order rate, the challenges of supply chain on the inbound piece versus a manufacturing sometimes where you pretty much know what you're being tasked to produce when you come in and you go to that. So that makes it way more challenging, I think. And warehouse managers, like you said, have to be way more nimble and flexible and dynamic, and that takes a toll on them. But like you said, if there's technology that can help them get a couple of steps closer, that's just going to go a mile. I mean, that's just going to go a long way. It's one of the biggest challenges, I think, in the industry is just that fluctuation in demand and just firefighting every day. But you're always held to the standard of the service level agreement, the customer experience, that part of the variable cannot change. Everything else has to change behind it. And any tools that can help leaders do that, I'm always all for them.
Absolutely. There's no question that is an issue in today's market is the variability in the day's model and even inside of the week, right? Inside of the month, we have, you may have you may be a warehouse where you've got one day you're shipping toothpaste and there's 216 cases on a pallet. And then the next day you're shipping, I don't know, laundry soap and you get 30 cases on a pallet. Well, the cost to actually, if you're doing it at the case level, the cost of the laundry soap is 5 times more expensive to go through the warehouse than the toothpaste. But if I'm the executive, a case is a case.
That's right.
Right. So being able to determine that in advance is the true value of having a tool that can tell you what you need to do. So I can see that, if I get notice from my customer or my marketing guys that we're doing a promotion on laundry soap next week, I can run a model and figure out I'm going to be 5 people short. Do I want to have 40 hours of overtime or do I want to bring in 4 temps to do that? Or during the day, if I've got 5 businesses or 5 clients in my 3PL, I would say, you know what? Let's move 4 people from client 1 to client 2 to get rid of this and solve this problem. We call that labor balancing. If I see that the day before, rather than at 12 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday where I've got no options. Hey, Ben, do you want to stay for overtime? No, not tonight. I'm going out with the boys. You're out of options.
Well, and I mean, I like to use a lot of car analogies a lot, like because you mentioned the maps in the beginning. Hey, if I'm going on a trip, so then you will know ahead of time, I do not have enough fuel in my car to make this trip. or I do not have enough horsepower in my engine to drive at the sustained speeds that would be required to get there and when you want to get there. And so you would say, I need to do something about this. But in the warehousing world, that doesn't happen, right? Like the sales happen, and then the feedback to the manager is, what the hell happened? Why couldn't you do it? And well, I was 5 short. Well, no, I mean right. So I think like getting that flushed out and getting that to the surface is going to help, not only like for their mental well-being, but also just for the ops, right? If everybody knows it's just a spade, take the emotion out of it. We ran the analytics. This is what it says. We need 5 extra people. If we don't have them, we will miss according to the analytics. And it doesn't matter what motivational speech you give me or what fear speech you give me as the manager. It's just facts, right? And here they are coming out of the system. And that's why I love this, because there's a lot of perception, there's a lot of feelings, there's a lot of like anecdotal type things that go on in this industry, and where people arrive at those conclusions, I don't know. Right? It's different for each person. So I love to get to the actual data, the truth, and then you can go from there once you can get to the truth. So I love it.
Sort of my mantra has been for, the last 30 years is let the data drive the solution.
Yeah.
And it takes all of that, we'll call it noise, out of the equation. Like if I'm comparing your site against my site, and you come back and say, yeah, well, you get all the easy orders, or, you've got all the old senior guys or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You take that noise out. Your building's 5 times bigger than mine. Of course, you're going to be more efficient, right? Those are things where you take that out of the noise. And we do that for that specific reason. So you can compare productivity from one site to another, one customer another, across multiple metrics, multiple countries.
Yeah. I love that. And it leads me into my next question, or my next point, I guess it is. And that is, and I've heard you talk about this before, where executives, they always want to benchmark, right? They always want best practices. They want to know, is my operation optimized? Are we doing the best in class? Are we doing the best practices? But I mean, I've always felt like maybe that's not the best way to look at that. You should look at what is the optimal for you and your facility and your setup with your product mix and your variables, versus blanket comparing them to what 10 other facilities are doing, because there's so many variables and they're all different, and it is not always apples to apples. Is that far off? I mean, how do you feel on that?
Well, that's pretty much bang on, right? So there's no such thing as best practices. There's optimal practices, which are based on your resources that are available, the size of your building, people you have, automation, your budget, right? We all can't be Amazon. We all can't spend $50 million and still be inefficient, right? We can't do that. And so then comparing one site to another, by saying, oh, well, I want to figure out who's the best in class for case picking, right? And you go, okay, well, let's look at one of the grocery store chains, because that's all they do. And they're built for all of that. But then I'm a e-commerce company that's picking socks out of a bin. I can't compare that. So and this is always the problem. I want to compare myself to my competition, but they're using different things. They use a different WMS or a different ERP that's causing me all kinds of headaches. Like, these are things that anybody that comes in and tells you, well, the best practices is doing this, is really saying, oh, I've been into the most expensive operations on the planet. I know how they work, and you should do that. You made the comment earlier about hiring an ex-Amazon guy who goes into a different company and goes, oh, well, where's all your reporting engines and where's your sortation system? Yeah, no, we can't afford that. Figure out the answer, to my problem, not to Amazon's problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And because I've said this before too, like I feel as if oftentimes you could go to a quote unquote underperforming facility. I've seen this happen where you go to a facility, they're underperforming here. If you could lift those people out of that facility, include the managers, and drop them into a facility that is highly mechanized, is automated, has technology, they would then become a high performing staff. And if you swapped, if you vice versa, if you took the people from that facility and dumped them into this warehouse with no tech, chock full of goods packed to the brim, they would quickly become an underperforming, right? And so it's not always necessarily due to an underperformance of the people. A lot of times it's just the tools that they have or don't have, the resources that they have or don't have, and the unique properties and variables that are applicable to them where they work, right? And when you get all those things out, I think you get to that optimal number. Optimally, based on all that, this is how we should be performing. Now, if we're severely underperforming now, okay, right? But to hold us to the same standard that an Amazon FC is running at, and we are a mom and pop 3PL or a warehouse is just foolish, really, in my opinion. So,
Well, and this is the difference between your operator and your executive, because your executive thinks we should be Amazon. And I'm not measuring performance of my people. I'm measuring performance of the operation on throughput, right? So activity. Okay. Theoretically, what you said is true, but in actual fact, the more automation you have, the less productive your people are, because the automation masks or hides their lack of productivity. They let the machines do it, and they stand around and do a lot of watching of the automation. Whereas in a non-mechanized operation, people do tasks that there's no metrics for, right? So they're hand writing down, your orders on a piece of paper rather than scanning an RF. Well, okay, great. Did you accommodate in your plan for the 34 seconds it is for the no? So that just goes as underutilized time that, oh, well, they're not performing. So the more people travel and they're walking, in fact, their productivity rate goes higher, because when I'm walking and I'm calibrating you walking, you're actually working.
Right.
I might not be producing, but I'm working at as fast as I can. You can't ask somebody to walk at 7 miles an hour. Right. So you can't ask, somebody to be picking a 42-pound box of brake parts at 35 an hour. You'll have nobody left. They'll have no arms. Right. So these things the automation masks the productivity. And I think what happens is people get depressed because they think I should be doing the same work, where that guy over there, he's in the automated operation or the automated section. He's pressing buttons and I'm lifting brake parts.
Yeah.
How demotivating is that?
Yeah, it's like we're gonna have a race, Lee. I am going to drive a Mercedes, and it is going to be very smooth and very fast. And you are going to be in a manual Jeep Wrangler with top on it.
No, I'm in a potato sack.
a potato sack. Yeah, like I win the race in the Mercedes, but like who actually performed better? Probably you in the potato sack, or
from an expectation. Absolutely. And so this is the difference between how management looks at things, thinks that everybody should be in a Mercedes, but the reality is that my people are working like crazy in a potato sack, but we're not factoring in all the touches and all the things that they're not doing. So we try and highlight that as underutilized time. Typically underutilized time is a function of floor level management. It's not the people.
Yeah.
So if part of, and again, we'll probably talk on this briefly, but I basically came up with a theory called the labor paradigm. And essentially what it means is, you go out on the floor, you look on the floor, and on Mondays we do 5,000 cases. Then on Wednesdays we do 8,000 cases. And on Friday we do 3,000 cases. But I'm the manager. I look out my window every day and everybody's working, right? And it doesn't matter where you are in the world, this happens. On Mondays, guys walk this fast because they know it's an average day. On Wednesday, they walk a little bit faster. Why? Because they don't want to work overtime, right? And on Friday, they don't want to get sent home, so they walk slower. And this is this collusion. And if I don't have standards, it's just people work to the activity, right? So they mirror each other. So if I know it's a slow day, I'm going to slow. If it's a fast day, I'll work fast. Operations don't have the ability to look at that. They don't see it. So if you can identify that and highlight that on a day-to-day basis, you will win the game.
Yeah, and I think those are just there's a term that I like that is growing, and that's the term operational reality.
Yeah.
That is an operational reality of the world that we live in. People, humans, incentives, how they whatever. And so, if you are a 20-year veteran manager, you can probably pick up on a lot of those things because you've learned an experience. If you're a new manager in the industry, you're not going to you have no hope. You don't know those things, right? So if there's no tool or technology that can kind of help guide you with that, your your tribal knowledge, your experience is not going to be enough because you don't have it. You don't have it.
Well, they don't
All
have
right.
they don't have the experience, right? The average manager has less than 6 years warehouse experience total.
Yep. No, and it takes a while, right? It takes a while to learn and pick up on all those things. So let me do this. You're hinting at me that you want to talk about your book. So you have written a book, which is awesome, by the way, called Warehousing 101 Reference Guide, which is great. I love it. I appreciate all the thought that went into this. But can you tell us about your book? You know, what motivated you to write it? What was it like writing it? And what types of things have you poured into it out there for the community to benefit from?
So in probably we'll call it a self-fulfilling model. I'm tired, or I was tired of teaching companies about warehousing.
Mm,
And so it made it, and as I've been going through the market, I'd seen lack, and I will call it the knowledge base in supply chain is
yeah,
dropping every single year. Right.
yeah,
And the new generation that's coming in, like, they don't understand the terms. They don't understand, like, the basis of designing a building or whatever.
yep,
And so all of the stuff that I've been creating for 20 years to do training sessions and things like that, I decided that I would put it in one place where I could say, okay, rather than me coming in and teaching your
here,
people, here's a book. Read the book. You can
yeah,
learn about the types of travel. You can learn how to slot. You don't need me to come in and do it. And at the same time, I'm passing on the knowledge to the next generation, because I don't think people understand the gap. And the problem that
yep,
we're going to get to is, if the next generation doesn't know what they're doing, we don't have the time, or we'll call it the gap, to make the mistakes that we did in the early 2000s, right? You used to have an order, turn cycle time is 72 hours, 3 days. Now you're lucky if you get, 12 hours. So if you make a mistake, that mistake over 12 hours now could be $100,000, $300,000, because you just don't know what you're doing.
yep,
So putting in the book, the ability, boarding, bringing in new managers, bringing in people that want to get into the industry, there is no definitive document anywhere that talks about, oh, what are the basics of warehousing? What is slotting? Why do I plan for labor? What types of travel? How does travel accommodate in my business? If you go to people in the industry and ask, if I told you, at 100% of my labor, how much is travel? What percentage of my 100% is travel? Okay. People don't understand that it's somewhere between 50 and 60% of my employees'
yep,
time is travel. If you don't understand the basics of that, or the basic rules of thumb about, oh, if that's, 50% of my travel is that, and 50% of my labor is in picking, that means that 25% of the time that people are traveling and picking, they're doing nothing but walking or traveling.
yep,
If I can reduce that or make that faster, that's a benefit to us. I go
yeah,
through around the globe, and that concept is foreign to probably
yep,
80% of the companies that I talk to. So I wrote the book so that whether you're just getting into the industry, you want to start getting into consulting, you want to start operating your own business, this allows you to do that. And it gives you a frame of reference. There's also a glossary of terms in there that, if you're coming into the industry, people in warehousing actually know this. We don't talk in real language. We talk in acronyms. And if you don't have a source to go find those acronyms, it's brutal. It takes you years to learn and understand what we're doing. So the idea
yeah,
is to build the science in a book, in a reference manual, where you could go in and say, oh, geez, what is, slotting, and read up on it or whatever. How do I slot? Why do we slot? And all those things, or why do we labor plan? And so that's why I wrote the book. It was self-serving. So I was getting tired of going, traveling and teaching companies about warehousing. And these are the professional companies.
Yeah.
They don't have an onboarding process to bring you into the industry. So that's why I wrote the book.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I started the website, because this industry is so whack-a-mole, right? It can be all over the map. It's just figuring out what's what and how you learn this and who you got this from. It's all piecemeal, right? There's not very many centralized documents or centralized places that you can go to learn how to execute and do well in this industry. Each kind of company has their own little thing, but it's very scratching the surface, right? It's high level. And so I just think this industry in general can utilize things like this much more resources, much more networking to gain this knowledge faster than learning it the hard way after a 10-year career or a 15-year career. And by that point, you're kind of cooked, right? Like you kind of burnt out. I wish I would have known this in year number 2 or year number 3 versus having to learn it in 6 or 7. So I appreciate that. I really like that you wrote that book, and I'm going to be picking it up. I'm going to be picking that up because it seems to be very interesting to me. So, all right, Lee. Well, so where can people find out more about you and your organization? I know I've seen the brochure. I know you're on LinkedIn. I know you're traveling. If people want to work with you or LaborAI, where do they go? How do they find you?
You can go to getlaborai.com. That's our website. Obviously, you can connect with me through there. I'm happy to answer any questions. You can get me on LinkedIn. I'm all over that. For those of you that are sort of in the outskirts of, cities and things like that, you can see me on a milk carton. So, I'm basically available pretty much anywhere. And then we have offices in Bangkok, Sydney, Australia. We've got people in Europe, Toronto, Florida, San Francisco. So we're growing rapidly, and always looking for new people for our organization and for new customers.
Awesome, Lee. I love that. I've really enjoyed chatting with you today. I really mean, I say this to every guest that comes on the show, but I really have enjoyed chatting with you because I appreciate your insightfulness, and I really like the solution that you've created because I think it just solves a lot of pain points and gets things to the data, which is where they need to be in this industry. And so I will always champion people that are doing both of those things, helping warehouse managers, warehouse leaders, and moving the ball forward in terms of tech to get the data flushed out, because that's where the truth is. Once you get there, then you can really do some things that are right. Get rid of those biases and those perceptions. So I really appreciate you coming on the show, man. I'm sure I'll see you around the LinkedIn streets, as they say. I live out there. So thank you again, my friend. It was an honor and a pleasure, and best of luck to you and LaborAI in the future.
Appreciate all your time, Ben. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you got it, Lee. Thank you. All right, guys. Well, that concludes today's show. Thank you again to Lee Rector, the CEO of LaborAI, for coming on to talk about the solutions that they are providing out there in the industry, the resources that they're bringing. It sounds very cool, very unique, and very needed out there in the industry. So check him out. Check out his book, Warehousing 101, a reference guide. Very cool piece of literature there. And I appreciate what he is doing with handing that out to leaders across the globe to really teach them about warehousing. As the Warehouse Underground goes, please sign up for the community if you haven't done that. I think we almost have 200 people that have signed up for the community. We're approaching that. Networking in there, some message boards, and we have some very cool live events that I'm going to be revealing pretty soon that are coming down the pipe that you guys won't want to miss and that you will want to be a part of. If you have not checked out the Tiger Team, look for episode 6 coming out next month with some wit, humor, and sarcasm. all things going on out there in the world of warehousing and distribution. So as today goes, thank you again for Lee. I will see you next week for episode number 25. Thanks, guys. God bless.